ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Grace.
And of course, you are with us on our ASEAN Daily, where we bring you news from Southeast Asia. To kickstart our news in the morning, we bring you something that is regarding on the MH17. So key countries are calling for tribunal for the Malaysia Airlines crash. 5 countries investigating last year's shooting down of a Malaysia Airlines plane over Ukraine are calling for an international tribunal to prosecute those responsible.
And at the same time, this is also another additional news regarding MH17 that we just commented the other day. And apparently for Australia's Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, said that her government is committed to working with Malaysia, Ukraine, Netherlands, and as well as Belgium, and the broader international community to secure this justice for the families of the victims. Because after all, when we think about the incident, it was not entirely the Malaysian Airlines' fault. It was misjudged by the other party that they shot the plane down.
They were the rebels. They would probably shoot down any planes. Although there were criticism why airlines wanted to choose a route where is common. I mean, a route that is war-torn zones, but at the same time, we can't really blame the airline industry.
Right.
It is kind of common practice. When it comes to the rebels itself, they were trying to fight against the Ukraine government as they were funded by Russia, as a form of proxy war against Europe in a way. So United Nations diplomat said that the 5 countries wanted the UN Security Council to establish the UN tribunal. So it's UN based in a way that would prosecute those responsible. Last week, their legal experts came to New York to meet with council legal advisors.
And then it's really, I will say, nice gesture coming from the oldest countries that would love to help regarding this MH17. And another diplomat mentioned that legal experts presented a draft statute to establish the tribunal and a draft the UN resolution that would also authorize it as well. And that Russia also holds the key to adoption of this resolution.
That's the unfortunate part. Because Russia hold the veto-wielding, Russia is a veto-wielding council member. If they decided not to let these 5 countries to further the investigation and the tribunal, they cannot do so. But Malaysian United Nations Ambassador Ramlan bin Ibrahim said that Malaysia has preliminary discussions with Russia, but it's too early to say whether Moscow will support a resolution. That's the tricky part, because Russia's voice is as loud as the US, even Europe altogether. On the other hand, another breaking news, this time is in Melbourne, but it's related to Malaysia, which we reported yesterday regarding on the property scam happening in London, where Malaysia government body MARA was involved. So AFP has launched raids in the Melbourne over Malaysia property kickback deals.
And at the same time, Australia federal police officers have launched these raids in the Melbourne as part of that international bribery and the money laundering investigation involving high-ranking Malaysian officials, businessmen, and also purchase of this Melbourne property. So when you talk about the money laundering investigation, it is not a new method to make money in any countries. But however, it looks like there will be very strict and also come up with perhaps the policies to seize these all those corrupted actions.
In fact, what they are doing right now is really, really good. They are definitely pushing forward the investigation quite fast by seizing computers and file on Thursday morning from a home in Vermont South. And it is believed to be several other properties that were targeted across Melbourne. So this is not just like one house, which was unfortunately Malaysia government body MARA was involved. But these are series of properties that are targeted by property scammers.
And this AFP's Operation Carabola was launched in response to this investigation by Fairfax Media into a scheme involving Malaysians using multi-million-dollar Australian properties to launder the funds and also to return the sort of kickbacks to Asia as well.
While corruption links to property purchases in Australia by foreign nationals have generated significant political interest from Treasurer Joe Hockey and senior cabinet members, that this is the first time the police have launched a full-blown operation. So this is actually the first time they have concrete evidence that money laundering and bribery was involved in property scamming. So that's all for our breaking news. We move on to political and current news, but before that I will put one song on, and when we return we will talk more about politics and current issue in Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Welcome back, this is Grace.
And of course, you are still with us on our ASEAN Daily. So talking about politics, no country that is doing much more worse than other Southeast Asian country than in Myanmar, where issue of ethnicity is being politicized. But to add salt to the already, wounded wound, apparently Thai Buddhists is seeking to help anti-Muslim Myanmar monks to set up radio station.
It is very interesting. Every time we talk about the Myanmar, it's always something that we can learn about the Buddhism in that nation. And the power of Buddhism there is so overwhelming. And that sometimes we tend to think that where is the right to the citizens of Myanmar?
It's really sad, because in the past, especially when I was younger, whenever I think about Buddhism, I always think about the Suu Kyi movement, the one that is popular in Taiwan, where they actually really help the poor. And I think about Tibet, where the famous Dalai Lama is seeking for independence for its people. But nowadays, Buddhism has become like ISIS.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because it's supposed to be a religion of peace, just like Islam, but now it has become a religion of the tyranny.
That's a very interesting way of putting that the Buddhism in Myanmar is almost like ISIS there.
Yeah.
And then, in fact, more than a dozen Thai Buddhists were among the hundreds who attended this 2-day conference in Yangon over weekends organized by the Mapata movement. And when it comes to this religious radio/television program in the kingdom, they promised to donate around $44,000. This is the worth of radio equipment to this Myanmar movement. And radio and television plays a very important role in reaching this Buddhism in Thailand, and it will also help them preach Buddhism in Myanmar.
But unfortunately, now they are helping this Mabata movement to spread messages that are filled with sectarian hatred, and especially towards the Muslim Myanmar in the Muslim Myanmar. And what is worth is they are actually supporting and donating this $44,000 worth of radio equipment to the movement. One of the leader, president of the Bangkok-based World Fellowship of Buddhist Youth, Ponchai Pinyapong rejected the suggestion that Myanmar's hardline Buddhist monks routinely use hate speech against Muslims. And this is another thing. They become deniable, the reality on the ground. And in fact, what they added was they don't encourage anyone to destroy the mosque or kill Muslim people. They just want to protect Buddhism for the next generation. Doesn't this quote sound familiar to you? It sounds exactly like what the Malay Malay Muslim hardliner in Malaysia would say, Perkasa especially, whenever they want to justify their action, they would say that we don't encourage violence. What we are encouraging is to protect the Malay rights in Malaysia. But in reality, it's the other way around.
I hope that this is not the sort of Southeast Asian culture that when it comes to perhaps press conferences or going on for the public speaking, that they're not just to be so neutral and try to be diplomatic, but however all the phrases and the quotes they expressed, they just don't make sense, because they said they will respect their religion. Then why can't they just stay in a peaceful manner and also at the same time why not respecting the other religion? But then they mention that they're not here try to kill or destroy the whole Muslim community. Why there is even a necessity to mention that even that single phrase, and that just by expressing their point of view, it will affect the whole Muslim community.
It is, and it's really sad because at one end you have extremist Muslim in the region of Southeast Asia, and then at another hand you have Buddhist extremists. If every religious organization in Southeast Asia are turning into an extremist organization, that means violence will be inevitable in Southeast Asia, and this would be a very sad case of civil war or religious war.
Yep. Which country in Southeast Asia has the most peaceful sort of status when it comes to religion?
I can't really answer
exactly.
that.
Exactly. So it looks like perhaps you could be right. We never know what kind of war we'll be facing if this doesn't resolve.
Mm-hmm. And talking about trying to resolve things into a more peaceful manner, in the Philippines, they are hosting the ASEAN Election Observation Workshop. The election observers from various ASEAN member countries were in the Philippines to attend the first ever election observation workshop in the region.
And this is very interesting, and like it is mentioned, it's the first time, and it's also hosted by the Commissioner on Elections and the Department of Foreign Affairs and the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And that their aim is to surface the best election observation practices from around the world that are may adapted in the local context.
And for the host country, election observers are an invaluable source of third-party opinions on how adeptly the polls have been managed, how protected the electorate's rights and privileges have been, and ultimately how credible the elections were. This is according to Chairman Andreas Bautista. But you know, one thing, I was actually the last general election, I was actually an election observer.
And then how did it go?
Actually, to be honest, the area that I was, which was in Gombak, was actually quite peaceful. It's not just me, but even people around there, the opposition member, the government, the pro-government supporters, they were doing their own fact checking as well. They were definitely looking for people who are suspicious, not Malaysian. But I think it was a bit racist because they base it on facial feature. So those that look a bit like Bangladeshi or Indonesian, they will just howl out, and then they will ask like, "Oh, where's your IC? Can you sing Negaraku?" I thought that was a bit racist or a bit too much to do that. But at the same time, I do think that Malaysia care about elections. They do care that at the end of the day, it has to be based on fair and transparency. And I think based on the area that I was, it was kind of transparent. On the other hand, election observation is actually an effective tool to increase transparency and improving governance and accountability.
And I hope that this election observation can improve when it comes to not only the transparency but also credibility between the public as well as the government. And it is of course it is being observed during the election as well as how people vote, and perhaps they can learn to respect when it comes to their attitude or etiquette, even when it comes to elections.
But I guess my only comment will be the election commission. Until now, they seem to be untouchable. No one can criticize them, and they are not being judged or prosecuted for any wrongdoings, especially the issue regarding the ink and regarding on how fair the election was.
Right.
So in a way, it's still a long shot for Malaysia to be seen as a transparent nation. On the other hand, do you know about nuclear?
I've heard of it 1,000 times from North Korea.
Whenever I think about nuclear, of course you think about North Korea. I'll think about World War II.
Yeah.
But do you know that nuclear is closer than ever in Southeast Asia?
Well, it sounds
nuclear power.
It sounds very risky when it comes to nuclear. And what's happening is apparently there will be an ASEAN nuclear crisis center.
Wow.
Soon.
And I don't even know we actually have projects for nuclear power to generate nuclear power.
So. Well, to be honest, it is unavoidable when it comes to North Korea's threat, and that does affect the surrounding countries such as Japan. I mean, Korea is just a very obvious example, South Korea, but also China. All these countries are very heavily affected, and they are very worried about all these nuclear tests, and even when they launch the nuclear rockets. But I guess the concern has spread to Southeast Asia that Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, they will have a look to utilize this nuclear energy, in fact, from 2020. And it is also imperative from ASEAN to start developing this regional nuclear emergency response, as well as incorporating this technological disaster and a nuclear crisis into disaster management and response framework.
So what we have experienced the last time where a nuclear power plant in Fukushima was prefectured, and it caused a huge technological disaster, or they call it NATEC, and a lot of the crises that happened just that at that time was really unprepared for. So what we are seeing right now, especially Vietnam, they are the one taking the lead in ASEAN Nuclear Crisis Center. Vietnam Atomic Energy Agency recently stated that Vietnam would only begin constructing its first nuclear power plant when all safety conditions are met. In fact, they are the most advanced nuclear preparatory program in ASEAN.
And that is you're right there, that it is quite surprising fact that Vietnam is the most advanced when it comes to nuclear preparatory programs. So they have been practicing and also building this program in ASEAN region. And if they can perhaps share the knowledge with the surrounding countries, we can also be prepared when it comes to natural disaster, when it comes to anything to do with the nuclear crisis. And then this transboundary radioactive plumes from this nuclear meltdown, it may have sort of severe consequences. That could be a higher cancer risk and the contamination of food and water sources, and irrespective of all the national boundaries in the region as well.
So in a way that in view for the nuclear energy plants in this region, it's now imperative to start cultivating a regional culture of robust response readiness. In Malaysia, if you look at it, people don't even talk about this. There are some youth groups that are actually very concerned about this, but I think governments, civil society, and public in general, they need to start talking about it. Start talking about how can we respond when it comes to times of crisis, because the government do want to build nuclear power plant in Malaysia.
And I hope that this is a necessary program for all of us, not only the Malaysians, but also to all the Southeast Asians.
So we'll take another short break. When we return, we will go to the economic and business side of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Welcome back. This is Grace.
And of course, you are still with us. And talking about economy and in Southeast Asia, do you know that ASEAN region is considered the new China by New Zealand?
By New Zealand? Wow.
Yeah.
Out of all those countries, New Zealand is considered quite quiet country.
Yeah,
so
the
far.
only thing I know about them is Lord of the Rings and New Zealand ice cream.
Well, you could be right. They're quite famous for that.
Yeah, and apparently ASEAN region is the new China for Kiwi businesses.
Right.
And businesses are encouraged to look to ASEAN as the new China as it moves towards becoming the fastest growing region in the world.
Well, ASEAN, in fact, has been growing quite steadily for the past few years, and perhaps to New Zealand, the country itself, it could have been seen as perhaps the new China. And then, in fact, the ASEAN's growth rate of the 5% was expected to pick up to 7.5% over the next 10 to 15 years, and that can actually make it the fastest growing economic unit in the world.
I didn't know about it. That means in the future, we will be much more richer, perhaps?
And also perhaps stronger in that sense.
Stronger, economically
Yeah.
stronger. This is according to the ANZ chief economist for the Asia Pacific, Glenn McGuire. He said that ASEAN has been overshadowed by China. ASEAN was the middle child of the three pillars of growth in Asia, sandwiched between, guess where? China and India. And the thing is, no economy has done as much work and as much research in preparing for the ASEAN economic community as New Zealand. So it's a bit boastful for New Zealand to claim that. But yeah, if they are interested in us, what's wrong with that?
Well, for sure. But it is very interesting to know that they labeled ASEAN as a new China.
Mhm.
And then I'm just thinking very quickly that are they really stereotyping all those Asian as Chinese?
You know, you're right. They could be very, very,
I don't want to be sarcastic, but then it could be the fact that yeah.
I don't want to say further, but
Yeah.
if they're bringing business in, bring it on. But on the other hand, talking about China actually also have a lot to offer to ASEAN.
Mm-hmm.
So Malaysia ambassador to China, Datuk Zainuddin Yahya, said that China is one of the major powers yesterday. Major powers, both politically and economically, and would have a lot to offer to ASEAN. So by working together with ASEAN, both parties stand to benefit immensely.
Well, talking about the China versus all these 10 member states in ASEAN, if ASEAN can unite and also work as well as function as one whole community, we can easily just overcome China. And China is just one country, even though the size of it is really gigantic. And in fact, as ASEAN embarked on its community building and as well as integration that we are hoping to achieve by the 2015, China's continuous support and cooperation in realizing these goals are quite pertinent.
But the thing is, even though I agree China has a lot to offer to ASEAN, but I would like to somehow disagree with Ambassador Zainuddin, because I feel that the reason why our currency is at a very bottom
Right.
shitty condition right now, and we are not doing well economically, is also because our exports to China has slowed down. And the reason why is not because they don't want to buy our products. It's mainly because their economy has reached to a stage where people just don't want to buy that much anymore.
Right.
And because of that, we cannot put too much eggs to China. We need to diversify.
Well, I hope that we look at it positively, where just having the ringgit drop in Malaysia, perhaps we can, at this point, we can attract more Chinese tourists, just like how Thailand is attracting a lot of them, and also let them buy our own stuff in ringgit and to boost up all this ringgit value.
Maybe that is a good idea. I hope they don't come to Malaysia and buy a batik that is made in China. Just kidding about it, globalization. Anyway, talking about ASEAN integration, do you know that one of the key factors for ASEAN integration, surprisingly, is not the industrialization or business sector, it's actually agriculture.
Actually, agriculture in Southeast Asia is pretty strong when it comes to vegetables and other elements or products of agriculture. And then the countries the readiness of ASEAN integration is also depending on how the next Philippines leaders would treat this agriculture part. And vegetable importers and exporters, and as well as the Vendors Association of the Philippines, mentioned that while the third of the country's labor force is in the agriculture sector, and also that these workers are also among the poorest sector among all.
So the Vegetable Importers, Exporters and Vendors Association in the Philippines, or they are famously called as VIVA, they actually done a few different projects to boost up agricultural sector in the Philippines. First of all, they launched a program called Balik Bini, which offered production loans to more than 2,000 beneficiaries. But this was not sufficient enough because farmers have limited resources. It also implemented a project called Lakbe Aral, which brought groups of farmers across the country for them to learn different technologies and share their experiences. NGO can do as much as possible in terms of programs and awareness, but at the end of the day, policy changes is what can somehow boost the agricultural sector, not just in the Philippines but all over Southeast Asia.
Well, when it comes to policy change, or even the making the whole process may take quite a long time, but at the same time, when you think about it, if that can bring benefits and also advantages to certain sectors, and here we're talking about the agriculture sector, then it will benefit not only the whole nation of the Philippines, but also it can also give the examples to the other surrounding countries.
Mm-hmm. And we'll take another short break. When we return, we will go to the socio-cultural affairs of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Grace.
We are at the socio-cultural side of Southeast Asia. So 3,900 endangered turtles seized from Palawan warehouse. Wow. So many turtles.
There's so many turtles, and we're talking about the extinct animals here. And the Philippines Philippines authorities have they seized more than like you mentioned the figure 3,900, and then they are critically endangered the freshwater turtles from the warehouse, and they are owned by the Chinese national in southern Palawan.
And unfortunately, the confiscated 3,900 Palawan forest turtle listed as a critically endangered by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature were the majority of the total haul of 4,400 freshwater turtles.
Yes, and then some of them are very in the poor condition, and they're crowded in the concrete aquariums with a very unhygienic water, and they appear not to have been changed for a long time. And then from all this total, the 4,000 plus turtles, they couldn't save all of them, and some of them actually died, and that number is around the 200 plus.
I feel really sad. I mean, I don't mind where people consume meat, but I do feel that when an animal is endangered, we need to be much more careful because they will not be there anymore. And can you imagine our future generation do not know what is turtle? then it will be like the saddest thing. It's like not knowing what is dinosaurs. Of course, dinosaurs died like thousands or millions of years ago, but that's my point about
That is very true. That is also true, and then it is also a way of protecting and also reserving the whole ecosystem when it comes to environment. And then Southeast Asian, not only the Palawan, all this region, but then as in like general, the whole human beings. Now we shouldn't only take care about ourselves, but we also take care of the animals and all those critically endangered animal species. We need to look out for them, and perhaps we can donate if the system or facilities are not good enough. Then it should be the considered to improve and perhaps to save all those animals.
And on another hand, after talking about turtles, you have to talk about something that is controversial. Other than turtles, it's about graphic novel by Sonny Liew. Second sell-out success, third print run for controversial novel, and it was raised official hackles sold out on the second print run of 1,500 copies within a week. This is called The Art of Charlie Chan Hock Chai, features a fictional Singaporean artist who depicts the past 60-odd years of history through his comics. Acclaimed graphic artist Liew books include satires and caricatures of the late Lee Kuan Yew, as well as his political rival Lim Chi Siong.
And this is very, very interesting, and I'm not surprised a lot of people are keep on buying this
I would
comic
love
book.
to buy the book.
And then, yeah, for sure, from this comic book, just not like just black and white kind of novel book. It is a comic, and then it is also drawn by hand, and the people are very interested to know the history side of the Singapore as well. So it is sort of a very good way to educate people, as well as it could be very sarcastic also in the comical sense. But in total, the book has sold around 2,500 copies since it was just released last month, and that's very quick. The sell-out that we're talking about. And of the half dozen graphic novels published by these Epigram books, the most take 2 years to sell 1,000 copies.
That is sad, because people don't really read books anymore, especially in the past. When you talk about comics, I love to buy comics in the past, but nowadays I seldom even touch it. But I would buy this. Like if I were to go to Singapore, I would definitely buy it. And in the long term, he hopes that the book will speak up for itself, that readers will introduce it to their friends because they like it. That is a long-term success will be based on inherent qualities. I definitely agree. People will fall in love and will be falling in love with it. Do you know that ISIS is going mobile on an Indonesian car?
You mean, yeah, like you mentioned, vehicles. Well, it is happening in Indonesia. And apparently, fed up with all this capitalist plundering the Indonesia's riches, members of the country's second largest Islamic group have drawn up the plan to launch the People's Power Movement. And then on one of their list, it's called building a national car.
Wow. Someone is definitely following Tun Mahathir's footsteps, and it's ISIS of all, you know. I mean, it's not ISIS, it's actually Muhammadiyah group. Ambition would revive a project launched by autocratic leader Suharto's son, Tommy, in 1996, but halted during the ASEAN financial crisis. And of course, Muhammadiyah is known mainly for its ubiquitous schools and hospital, but it also has ambition to break into tourism, food and fishing sector. So it's not just a religious sect or religious group, it's also a business corporation.
Exactly. And then it's got the mission, apparently. It's got a mission to protect the Southeast Asia's largest economic from the globalization and capitalistic policies. They favor foreign investors over Indonesians. And then having this, our current president in Indonesia, Joko Widodo, he's already stumbling these efforts to attract needed investment from the abroad as well.
And for the national car, guess what? The prototype of a model called SMK
Yep.
might be built. And it's actually was used by Jokowi as his official vehicle when he was the mayor of Sukarta or Solo. The one other prototype can run on solar energy as well. This is according to Bambang Setia G, professor of Solo's Muhammadiyah University. So, you see, Indonesia is catching up. They
So-
learn it from Mahathir. I think.
So will SMK be another Myvi, just like in the Malaysia?
I
Very
hope.
economical car.
Actually, to be honest with you, I would encourage countries not to produce more cars. They should fix the public infrastructure in their own country. I would go for,
Public transportation?
an intra and interstate public transportation. It will be the best thing ever happened to Indonesia. I can tell that. Anyway, that's all for us today. We will continue our second segment, Anything Happened Friday. But before that, you can always go to our Facebook, Twitter, and as well as Instagram to catch up with the latest information on ASEAN.
And don't forget to listen to our podcast as well. We do have a replays, and you can look for them on YouTube. And then also our main social media channel, which is our website. So look for us at rianaasian.com.